Hello and welcome everybody to another episode of Strick and Roll. I'm your host, Shwin, and this is episode 42. I'm joined by, I think, first-time guest on this pod.
First time guest on any pod.
First-time guest on a pod. His name is Zach Blatter. That is at, what is it? At underscore Zach Blatter.
Yes, sir.
Zach Blatter on Twitter. He does all our graphic design and fucking social media shit for us. So that is what he does. And we're going to talk about basketball. But before we do that, to make a few announcements. The first being that the Strickland has an Instagram. Check that out. That is at the Strick.land on Instagram. We're posting all kinds of new content on there. The Strickland also has a YouTube channel where you may be watching this podcast. If you are and you haven't done so already, please hit like and then subscribe to the channel. That would be a huge help to us. The Strickland also has merchandise, which you can find on our website. That is at thestrick.land. There's a link there that'll take you to the store. We've got t-shirts, sweatshirts, hats, water bottles, even coffee mugs.
We got hoodies.
Hoodies. There you go. Anything you want, we got it. The Strickland also has a Patreon, which you can subscribe to. There are a number of different tiers. There's a $6 tier that gets you access to Pod Strickland, the podcast that I host every Friday with Prez. You also get access to the Strickland mailbag hosted by Andrew Steele, a.k.a. Doug, a.k.a. the Doug Bag, alongside Dallas Amico that comes out every other week. You also get access to the Strickland Discord where the conversation never stops. There are further tiers. There is a $9 tier that gets you access to Strick and Roll, this pod right here, where I rant and rave about the Knicks even more. You also get access to wonderful premium articles by Matthew Miranda, one of the best in the business. There are further tiers. There's a $15 tier, $30 tier, $50 tier, and a $100 tier. Those come with a variety of additional benefits like listening in on pod recordings and merchandise discounts, and even potentially co-hosting a podcast alongside yours truly one day, whether you choose to subscribe or not. None of this would be possible without you. So without further ado, we will get started, but that is not until I mention that this show is not possible without BetOnline, which is your number one source for all your betting needs. Get the latest odds, lines, and matchup reports for baseball, boxing, golf, and more. BetOnline continues to be the fastest and easiest way to place your wagers, including live betting and your favorite casino and card games available to play right from your phone. Head to the website or use your mobile device to sign up today and get in on the action. Remember to use promo code BLEAV, BLEAV, for your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right. The Knicks will officially start their summer league tonight. We're recording this on Saturday afternoon before they tip off at 5 p.m., which is their first game. Obviously, the Knicks did not make a draft pick this year. They made one draft pick last year who will be playing, Trevor Keels. Hopefully he has lost a good 25, 30 pounds from when we last saw him. They also have Jalen Martin who will be playing. He is signed to a two-way contract. Jalen Martin, right? Signed to a two-way contract. They signed him, or they effectively signed him off of the Overtime Elite program. And there's somebody else. Oh no, Jacob Toppin
is not
be playing. Yeah, he would be playing, but he hurt himself allegedly. And we will see what happens there. Is Dwayne Washington Jr.
Dwayne Washington not playing? I don't think he's on our books anymore.
So. But who is playing is there's another player of intrigue, Michael Foster Jr.
There's actually a handful of players of intrigue, but I'll start with Foster Jr. because you brought him up. But that is my favorite player on this team, and the only reason I'm going to be watching, I mean, not the only reason, but the main reason I'll be watching here at 5 o'clock, I'm putting him under a microscope first. This guy, if you haven't heard of him, he was a top 30 recruit 2 years ago out of high school and ended up going to G League Ignite, even though he had offers on the table from big schools. And he's kind of like this weird 4 with size and crazy wings. He's like a 6'9" guy with 7'1" wingspan. He's only 20 years old right now, and he won't turn 21 until January. He wasn't too productive with the Blue Coats last year. He spent with the Delaware Blue Coats, but with the G League Ignite in that first season, he just was putting up all these numbers. Defensively, there's a lot of concerns with him, but you see him and it's just a real hooper. Someone even called him like a mini Randall out here, and it's just this guy is putting up points. He'll get rebounds. He's got a cool, he's not the best of a defender or a protector, but he's got some crazy block highlights too. So I'm looking forward to him, and he's very highly regarded coming out of high school. So we'll see.
Yeah, definitely interested to see him. I actually am interested to see Trevor Keels because the guy was a fucking 5-star recruit. And he clearly, he was okay at Duke. He was fine at Duke. He obviously got drafted, what pick we had, 42 or the fuck it was. But yeah, obviously he didn't have such a great year at Duke that he, did credit to himself necessarily. Obviously coming in again as a 5-star recruit, going in the 40s in the draft is not a great, obviously didn't come off some amazing season. He clearly was not in NBA shape last year, or maybe at any point in his career so far.
He's had some productive moments for the Westchester Knicks though. He's gotten like the jumper looks okay. He's been able to score for them. It's just when he comes over here, it's like a deer in headlights. So still very early in his career.
Yeah, we'll see. I'm not very invested in the summer league. I'm like more invested in just seeing Jalen Martin than anything else because he's actually athletic and a wing. And look, I mean, I can't say I've been fucking crunching Jalen Martin tape, but from everything I've read and from what little I've seen, if he got a reasonable 3-point shot, he'd be a very interesting player. It looks like.
I'm curious to see how they'll deploy him because he's so young and I don't know if he's ready. Just like, all right, because we've seen guys come into summer league like Grimes and McBride, and they're just like, okay, go cook and just go do whatever you like, even though they're going to play a much more strict role in the regular season. So I'm curious to see if they'll have Martin just like go out there and cook and just see what he does, or if they'll put him in like some strict role. It's like, oh no, you're only standing in the corner, you're only guarding this guy, you're only taking catch and shoot threes. Let's see. I'm just curious to see how they deploy him and where they think he's at developmentally right now. Because if he's, I mean, how old is he? 18, 19? This guy is just so early. He's younger than me. Like, it's the first time we had a player like that in a long time, ever. So we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder if athleticism has been something that they feel like they need to upgrade on. Maybe not aggressively or like as a absolute priority thing, but I do find it interesting, like, getting a guy like DiVincenzo, who is not the most athletic player in the NBA, but he's probably our most athletic perimeter player on the team right now, at least in terms of vertical pop. And obviously Jalen Martin is kind of a high flyer too. So I'm curious about that. Obviously they haven't. Athleticism has not been like, they're not a team that just drafts athletes typically, or hasn't been. But I am interested in kind of like a little shift in their drafting the last couple of years. Obviously, they didn't make a draft pick this year, but guys like Keels and guys like Jalen Martin, they are deviations from what they did in the draft their first 2 years, with, obviously Quickly and Toppin, and then Grimes, Deuce, Sims, and even Jokic, older prospects, not super old, but older prospects. Guys that had multiple years of experience in college, or in Jokibaitis' case, in professional basketball in Europe. And then now you have guys that basically were one and dones. In Jalen Martin's case, didn't even go to a D1 program, obviously, right? He played for Overtime Elite. He did actually, very interesting. He finished valedictorian in his class, I believe, in high school.
Did he? I did not see that.
Yeah, Begley had in his piece yesterday. And then he was taking classes at Morehouse College while he was playing for Overtime Elite. So that's an interesting one. I'm like very intrigued by Jalen Martin
there are a bunch of people on draft Twitter who are like, how did this guy go undrafted? The Knicks need to focus on this guy's development. They're like, wait a minute, this guy's just completely fallen off the radar. So yeah, he's definitely one of the guys we'll see. I really want to see just what type of role they throw him in right away, because that'll tell you a lot about what they think of him. So the other guy you've been forgetting about, you can't forget about, is Coach Tibbs' favorite, Daquan Jeffries, who might be like in the camp of, are you too good for Summer League? Like, this guy is way older than half the roster. He's played like a handful of NBA minutes. He's a good defender. He's a good athlete. He can shoot it.
Here's what I want you to do. All right. I want you to Google Daquan Jeffries' agent. Do that.
Let's see. I'm going to make a nice guess that it has 2 A's after the first letter.
Well, you will see shortly.
Let's see.
Oh, Daquan Jeffries' agent.
It's Bill Duffy, who's not CA.
And who is Bill Duffy's main client on the Knicks?
RJ Barrett.
Yes. So I don't think Daquan Jeffries is much more than a nice little additional
a Tibbs favor who makes practice harder and puts our guys
just a little quid pro quo. Yeah, little, hey, we got your guy, but we'll give you a little other business. I also think that's why the Knicks were allegedly interested in Grant Williams about 5 hours before he agreed with Dallas. Yeah. But look, I have absolutely nothing planned. This is your request. So
my request.
Yeah, you tell me what you want to talk about, because I'm in off-season mode. I'm checked out. I got my rant off my chest the other day, and I am perfectly at ease not
The rant was
worrying
great.
about.
I had to cut it up into a YouTube video to show it to the people who didn't watch the pod
Yes,
because that rant was too awesome. It's doing well too, the video.
good.
I guess I'll talk about Dante because I haven't like spoken on camera about him. My knee-jerk reaction was a little bit embarrassing, I guess, if you will. And I was one of those people who was like, "Oh, what are we gonna do without a backup four? We don't have it. We need size. We need a rebounder." And then as I talked to my smart colleagues of the Strickland and even Knicks Film School and all the other people online who were like, actually, we don't need a gigantic four down there because most teams don't have like I like the point you said on with XJ. You were like, are we gonna get cooked by Rui Hachimura on here? Like that is that what we're worried about on here? And you look at Josh Hart, and if you look at what the Knicks were kind of asking Obi to do and what he was failing at, I mean, Obi's great at certain things. Just what he was asked to do in New York. It's not, and we've talked about it for hours on here, but it's not like what his strong suit was. If you look at Hart and you look at what Tibbs asked Obi to do, that's what Hart does. This guy's probably a better rebounder than Obi right away, even though he's shorter. He's probably equally as good, if not better, at guarding fours, which is fine. And in transition, he gives you similar production. Yeah, it's not as cool. He's not doing windmill dunks and stuff on transition, but Hart's a demon in transition too. So you move him down to the four, and then you get Dante, who's pretty awesome. This guy's just like another good player who can shoot. He's a great athlete. He's a great passer. He moves in space. He's very well to play like within a system. And the most important part with him is he'll get us out of transition. That was something you and actually talked about in the last pod. The first half of the season was just so stagnant and so much ISO ball with Randall. And like, I know it's ISO with Brunson too, which is even more productive. But still, these teams were so. What were we in pace the first half of the season? We're definitely like bottom 10 in pace. But when Hart comes over, that pace totally increases, and I think Dante will do the same thing. So now I'm totally in the camp of we're good at Josh Hart with backup four. Maybe they go and make a trade or bring in somebody on the biannual who's a four as an emergency four in case Randall gets hurt. But right now, like we're good. And you mentioned it before, guys get minutes when there's injuries. So
Yeah, I mean, look, the DiVincenzo signing I'm fine with. It's not the perfect signing in the entire world.
there are no perfect signings like that. I mean, unless
well,
you're Jalen Brunson. Besides Brunson, there's no
if you get
magical perfect.
stars, superstars, they're the perfect signings. Everybody else, you're just trying to fit into a role. And I actually was. It's kind of funny because I usually hate this pod. Not this pod. This pod is great. You should.
I was like, what?
I usually hate this pod that I'm going to reference, which is the mismatch with KOC and Chris Vernon.
Not my cup of tea.
Yeah, not my cup of tea. But I was. Look, there's only so many pods to go around. At some point, you got to compromise and listen to what's out there. So I was listening in on their most recent episode, and Vernon actually brought up a pretty interesting point, which I think is like, I mean, I think we all intuitively know it, but when somebody actually says it, it makes you think. And what he was talking about is like, there are a group of players every year that cash in on the right moment. And oftentimes that is due to team success, which they were part of and maybe even a key part of, but not the driving force of. And the guys he referenced were like, one was Bruce Brown, which I think is different because he got a 1-year deal basically with the team option. It's a different thing than these other guys. But he brought up Gabe Vincent, 3 years, $33 million, and Strus, 4 years, $63 million. And he was just talking about like, look, like if the fucking Bulls don't shit the bed for the last 3 minutes of the final playing game, are those guys even getting like 50% of those contracts? And I think the answer is probably not.
Yeah.
And so I find that interesting because the other thing he said was like, look, Bruce Brown is awesome. He deserves the money he got. But like if you swapped him and you swapped Dante DiVincenzo, and DiVincenzo is doing the Bruce Brown stuff on a championship team, and Bruce Brown is doing Dante stuff on a second round exit team, like their price tags are probably different. And I thought that was an interesting point just because like I think we often I'm guilty of this too, so definitely not divorcing myself from it, but I think like a lot of times we're all guilty of like, oh fucking this guy's a fucking losing player, this guy's a winning player. I mean, I do this with Donovan Mitchell all the time where I'm like, he fucking sucks, we kicked his ass in the first round, what a bum. But like, obviously that's not a great encapsulation of everything. And I just thought that was interesting in terms of Dante DiVincenzo because, look, to me, is he a steal? Like, I don't know. I mean, not right now. It's not like you can say like he played way above what we gave him. But like, does he Is he going to be a driver of success for the Knicks? Probably not. But will he be a guy who can help us incrementally improve, that can make us better, that moves us on the margins? Yeah, I think he definitely can. And that's not actually really like to say that Obi wasn't good for us, but sometimes and I'm going to reference another pod, one I actually listen to, but not all the time. I was listening also to Sam Vecini on his pod, and they were talking about Obi Toppin, and they were just talking about how look, this is the best situation for Obi, going to a team that plays fast, that has a stretch five. Like, if it's ever going to happen for him, this had to be the situation for him. And then their next segment was talking about DiVincenzo, and they loved that signing for the Knicks. Because and the way they put it was smart, where he was like, DiVincenzo fits. This was not they were not comparing them, by the way, as fits for the Knicks, but he just said DiVincenzo is a good fit for the Knicks with what they're doing, in terms of they seem to really value rebounding. That seems to be a core part of their identity, all that type of stuff. They needed shooting. It made sense. And I agree with that. I think DiVincenzo is a good fit for us, for what we need, for how we play, for what we're doing, in a way that Obi just wasn't. Obi was he was never going to get the opportunity that you need to really give him at some point, because we have Julius Randle, and Tibbs, quite honestly,
just didn't trust him. He didn't trust him. He never did.
Tibbs didn't trust him. Tibbs didn't value him. That's not again, I have to constantly do this, but it's not, I'm over criticizing Tibbs for that, because it is what it is. That's just the fucking reality of the situation. So I'm not even being critical of him. He didn't value him, didn't trust him. And I think, given that Tibbs is going to be the coach, and I think the organization has landed on, okay, we figured out a formula to win ball games last year that really pushed us to a higher level. How can we now take that and keep working the margins and pushing them in our favor? And I do think a guy like DiVincenzo, who hits threes, that defends at a higher level than Obi does, that can kind of fill roles that, not the greatest ball handler, but can give you a little ball handling, gives you more spacing as a shooter, again, more versatile defensively, maybe, or at least allows you to use guys like Josh Hart a little bit more versatile, lean into his versatility. There you go. Lean into Josh Hart's versatility.
You're forcing Tibbs' hand here. You're forcing Tibbs to be creative and not just be this dinosaur old coach. Not even everybody at one position.
Yeah, I mean, I like it like that. Yeah, I wouldn't even say you're forcing him to be creative. I just think given the fucking roster, he kind of just has to use Hart in ways that maybe he wouldn't, and that allows you to tap into some of the versatility that guys like Hart, and to a lesser extent RJ Barrett, and Quickly and Grimes, these guys provide you. So I just thought there was just listening to those two thoughts from separate pods together. I thought that was interesting, because I think it's so much of what we talk about is, is this guy good in this role? Or, I mean, the Obi conversation is I'm just over it, because it is what it is. But so much of that conversation is well, did Tibbs fuck up, or did the organization fuck up, or was Obi bad, or was Obi not good at these things? And it's it's kind of a combination of all those
of things. Everything. Yeah, it's just a perfect storm of it's not going to work here. That's just what it was, and you can't sit around and pull blame at this guy and that guy. And just bite the bullet. It didn't work. We got 2 second-round picks. It's off the books, and that's it. You know what I mean? It's funny. Duarte goes for 2 second-round picks. When was he picked in that draft? Was he? I don't remember the number, but he was just a few picks after Obi, and you don't see anybody on NBA Twitter talking about, oh my God, the Pacers only got 2 seconds for Duarte. And they're both they're both seniors in college, or both guys who came in and looking to produce. And I like Duarte, I like Obi, I like them both. It just wasn't going to work out in either of those teams. And that's where we're at right now. And that's where that has to be.
Yeah, I just, the trade, look, let's be completely honest here. I mean, I guess it wasn't finalized until yesterday. The Knicks basically get the lesser of a second-round pick in 20.
2 not great second-round picks.
Yeah, they're not going to be great second-round picks. It's a bad trade. It's not good value. It
had to happen.
Yeah, the Pacers got great value in that trade. Even if Obi amounts to nothing for them, they got great value. They got basically what amounts to a free look at a guy, and they hold his fucking restricted free agent rights. So that's a great move for them. And I think he's going to be successful there. I think he's going to be good there. He's going to be better there than he ever would have been in New York. So good for him. But like the Knicks effectively ate shit because they wanted to dump the salary and they wanted to make sure that they could avoid the tax. And like, I don't think this is a scenario of they wanted to avoid the tax to save Dolan money. I think they want to avoid the tax because of repeater fucking consequences. And the reality is like, while I still believe this, I believe that internally they think they're closer to being a contender than consensus. But I would guess that they still don't think they are a contender.
Yeah.
And if they're not a contender,
they don't want to be in the tax.
Yeah, it just makes no sense to be a tax team if you're not a contender, if you don't believe you're a contender. So
and they'll happily go into the tax when they are a contender. We don't have to worry about that at all. So I think it's completely fine. They're just waiting for that moment, and they'll go into the tax.
Yeah, like I'm not worried about the tax thing, but yeah, like it sucks. I mean, the Obi thing, it sucks in every which way. I think it's fair to just say that front office fucked up basically almost all around with him. And that really is unfortunate because obviously he was the highest draft pick available to them. And they were interested at least in guys that like very specifically, they had interest in Devin Vassell, who, by the way, like I really like Devin Vassell, has not been a good defensive player in the NBA, but I think would have absolutely been a better pick than Obi Toppin for us. I think he would have garnered more trust from Tibbs. And I think he would have fit kind of like, again, when you go back to this, and there's this whole, like, I think there's a whole idea of this was an issue for the Knicks for a long time, is like, the Knicks had no identity. Like people talk about culture, right? I think culture ultimately boils down to, do you have an identity? Do you know what the hell you are as a team, as an organization, what you're trying to build? What is your team that you're trying to build? What does it look like? And I think for the longest time, the Knicks had no culture. They had no identity.
Our culture was being a complete mess. That was the culture.
Yeah, I mean, and even like, look, I think Mills and Perry were like, they weren't great, but they had at least figured out like, okay, it's good to keep draft picks. It's good to like not lock into contracts for guys that are not worth locking into and stay flexible.
It's good to have some veteran money on the books that maybe we can move it for picks. They knew it towards the end. Yeah, they cleaned up the act.
They figured out some like very like basic level baseline intelligence stuff.
It took Steve Mills like 16 years to figure that out.
It's actually it's really funny because he was maybe like the worst lead executive in basketball at the time he got fired. But if you put him in the NBA in like fucking 2005, he'd have been the best GM in the league. That's how much I don't think people really understand how much better front offices are now than they used to be. But like, I think the identity question leads into all this where it's like, they didn't know. I don't think the Knicks knew for sure what their identity was when like Leon and, when these guys took over. They had an idea, right? You hire Tibbs, you kind of have an idea of what you're going to do, right? Like, not going to be some run and gun team. You're going to have some baseline level structure on both ends of the floor, for sure on defense and even on offense. Like, I know people will be like, we don't run plays. We run plays. They're very boring. They're very limited, but we do run plays. But you knew what you were going to get. And I think as the time has gone on, and you got to understand also, Leon Rose, first-time executive, like I think they have ironed out more and more and more of like, okay, well, if this is what we want to be, it also entails this and this and this thing, and getting these types of players and getting this guy at this spot. And I think as that has continued to develop and they've kind of really started to figure out, okay, what do we want to be as an organization? What do we want to be as a team? What guys fit into that ethos? It just is a case of like Obi Toppin was never really going to work in that scenario, especially because Julius Randle is better than him right now and is better in the kind of identity we're developing. You can disagree with that. You can say like they should strive for a different identity. They should want to be something else. And I don't think that's actually unfair because I do think there are limitations to the offensive lack of flexibility and creativity we have. But I don't necessarily think that means that what you're adding these players to is a mistake. Like we saw this in Golden State. Obviously, they had Steph, who we don't have a Steph. As great as Jalen Brunson is,
You got
right,
Emmanuel quickly, man. I don't know what you're
yeah,
talking about.
I know. But as great as Jalen Brunson is right now, I can't say he's quite peak Steph Curry. But the point being, they went from like a very, very ISO heavy team. They didn't change a lot of personnel. They just switched coaches, and all of a sudden, those guys were able to play in a different type of system, ball movement, player movement, up tempo. So it's not to say that the guys the Knicks have can't do it, but the guys they have also can 100% play. I think in the way that they currently are being deployed by their coach, and I also would say that like culture and identity go beyond just like the pace you play at, how much ball and player movement do you have? What are your schemes? I think the Knicks look for certain types. And in a way, Obi fit a lot of those things, right? He's a hard worker. He's a guy who was polished coming out of college in terms of like he was a proven commodity to an extent. He excelled at the college level, right? He was a national player of the year at Dayton. So like he fit those things. But again, like as they've kind of gone on in time, they're like, okay, well, we want to be a great rebounding team. We want to be a low turnover team. We're more concerned with winning the possession battle than playing at a certain tempo. We care more about winning the possession battle than what our assist percentage is. And we want to be like a strong defensive team and all this stuff. Like as time goes on, he just kind of gets lost in the mix. And it's hard. Guys have to, this happens to players. This is not just unique to Obi. This happens to players all around the league. And it happens to teams all around the league where like they develop identities. And sometimes like, at some point you might have to evolve. I think the Knicks are close to a point where they need to evolve. That evolution can come from changing roster, like changing your player personnel, but it can also come from making a coaching change. We'll see which one the Knicks choose, but I think like you look at a team like Boston, and I think they have gone like we'll see what they look like, but this team is they're drastically different now from what they were. Like they're not going to be able to just switch everything like they have been doing for a while. Their guards are like, I mean, it's kind of weird. Like they went from having a glut of guards to now just being like, we have Derek White, who we love and is dependable, and Malcolm Brogdon, who is good, but like
Are you injured or we're not
yeah,
sure?
are you like, yeah, are you going to be healthy?
Yeah.
And then they have Peyton Pritchard, who I like, but like he didn't play last year.
We both like Pritchard, but now he's going to play. Like, he'll play when Brogdon is hurt, and he'll play if Brogdon is like, so.
But yeah, I don't know. Those were just kind of a lot of weird, not necessarily connected thoughts, but there's something I think to the idea of like figuring out identity, fleshing it out over time. And as you're fleshing it out, certain guys that were part of like establishing maybe the early part of your fucking program or whatever fall out of the mix. I mean, this happened with Dylan Brooks in Memphis. Like, I think any Memphis fan would tell you like Dylan Brooks was super important to them kind of establishing themselves in the post grit and grind era. But by like at some point last year, they were all also
We've grown past the need for Dylan Brooks, actually.
Right, right. And like I don't know if we grew past. I wouldn't say Obi's not the same. I don't know if we grew past the point of needing Obi to happen, but we grew to a point where what Obi needed and what was best for Obi was not in line with the direction
what we needed him to do.
Yeah, and it was also just not in line with what the organization was looking to do moving forward. And that sucks. Like it does suck because I do think there's a chance Obi's going to go to Indiana and be really good. Like, and the Knicks maybe will deservedly get killed if that's the case. But sometimes you just have to fucking. Have you ever watched Remember the Titans?
Nope.
Wow, you're so fucking young.
I'm a kid, dude. I don't know any of these movies.
It's a fucking Disney movie. Shut up.
I don't even watch Disney movies that much, so there you go.
What do you watch? Fucking porn?
YouTube videos and the Strickland. I watch every pod. That's what I watch.
You watch fucking porn. That's what you watch.
That is not true. It's not true. I watch great YouTube content creators like yourself. So,
but like, yeah, you just have to fucking cut a guy loose sometimes. Best thing for them could be the best thing for you. Maybe not the best thing for you, but I mean, look at the fucking conversations people like. I promise you, in about a month, aside from a small group of people, like we'll all have moved on from the Obi Toppin discourse because there's like no point to it anymore.